So how does Blue222's automation, particularly around bidding and scheduling, differentiate it from other platforms? And then what kind of impact is it having on engineering and real estate professionals?
The clients that we are best to service at this moment are anywhere from a small engineering firm that's managing environmental inspections around the country to a large, we're onboarding a $6 billion client right now that they're still doing everything manually. There are lots of engineering or A&E firms out there.
Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. Real estate is the world's largest asset class, yet one of its most critical phases, due diligence, is still stuck in the dark ages. Spreadsheets, emails, and phone calls remain the norm, slowing deals, inflating costs, and creating costly delays. In a market that moves billions, these inefficiencies aren't just frustrating, they're also very expensive. In this episode, I'm joined by Alan Grosheider, founder and chairman of Blue222, a company that's reimagining real estate due diligence through automation, AI agents, and a fully integrated inspection marketplace. We'll share how Blue222 is cutting out inefficiencies, streamlining transactions, and building a smarter, faster future for the industry. Whether you're an engineer, founder, or tech leader, this episode is packed with insights on driving innovation in legacy sectors. I'm your host, Nick Heim, and this is the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast. With that, let's jump into today's episode. Now time for our conversation of the week with Alan Grosheider. Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show today, and welcome.
Hey, Nick. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know we've been talking on and off about kind of the concept you've got here. I think it's a great idea, so I'm excited to just get into it. So Alan, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how your current engineering and product development led you to founding Blue222?
Sure. I have been an engineer for a long time. You know, I was one of those guys that was always an entrepreneur from an early age, paper routes, cut grass cutting, all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up having some people show up from Purdue and it taught, showed me this engineering, took me up to this engineering camp. And I was like, I'm going to be an engineer. Went to Purdue, did a little bit of industrial engineering and then ended up starting my own environmental inspection company. That was years ago. Ended up raising venture capital, building a nationwide company that did environmental inspections, and then merged that with a company in North Carolina. It still operates to this day. In fact, I was just emailing with the the person that was my right-hand person that is still running it over there just this morning. But while I was still there, I kept running that company for a while after we merged, and it just kept seeing Uber and companies like that come along and thought, why is it that you can click a button on your phone and a car shows up in 5 minutes to take you to the airport? You can get groceries ordered in, a couple hours, all that stuff. And with any sort of inspection work or any kind of real estate inspection, appraisals, environmental assessments, building inspections, home inspections, it's still pretty much emails and phone calls. And it's a slow process. Normally, you're buying a home, somebody hands you a piece of paper and it has a bunch of home inspectors and appraisers on it, and you start dialing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got huge engineering firms and A&E firms that do 25,000 environmental and building inspections a month, and they still do it by email. They have a room full of people, or these days they're probably spread out around the country, but they're on their computer sending emails all day, getting bids, the old fashioned way. That's what got us started. We just said there's got to be a better way. If Uber can do what they do, there has to be a better way to move people around and get bids. And that's what we built. We now have people using Blue222, large and small companies all over the United States that are using Blue222 to completely move away from email so that their people can use our platform to manage all of the bidding and scheduling of their inspection work around the country.
And that sounds to me like innovation born out of frustration. Alan, you've taken essentially your guys' personal experience, the pain points you felt firsthand, and it sounds like you've developed a solution to ease those as much as possible.
Yeah, we built. I built this to be something that I would have wanted at my previous company. If we could have had this, it would have made Yeah, we would have needed much fewer employees, and we could have generated a lot more work with the automation that we've built in the Blue222. It would have been amazing. I would love to have had what we built a few years ago when I was running that company.
And speaking so of automation,
Mhm.
we know that there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, which can not quite automate tasks, but do tasks in a similar manner that gets the
Yeah.
same end result for people. So, on that note, how is artificial intelligence currently transforming the real estate industry? And what role do you see it playing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I'll say what I think is going to happen across the board in real estate, and then where we fit into that. I believe that probably less than 5 years, most of the real estate transaction will be facilitated by our AI agents. There will still be realtors, but the smart realtors will have built a machine around themselves so that they can do 100 times the work they would have done before, but they're using artificial intelligence. And I think what that's going to look like is you're buying a home or you're buying a commercial building, and you go on to an AI agent of some sort. You describe what you want exactly, and it goes back and forth and asks you questions, and then it goes out into the market and finds it. And and then rather than you needing to go visit a whole bunch of properties and, maybe you see 10 or 15 different homes before you finally see one that you like, maybe you look at two, and, the second or third one is exactly what you're looking for because it's really gone into detail to figure out what you're looking for. But then you're gonna do a virtual tour, which, with Matterport and systems like that, that's already available. I think that'll get more robust. There may be robots that are moving around the house to allow you to look at anything you want to. And then you're going to schedule through AI. You'll schedule a visit. You'll probably, scan your face or something to get you into the home. And maybe a realtor will meet you there, maybe not. But you're gonna decide you want to buy that home. Then you're going to electronically sign a contract to purchase the home. All the negotiations going to go back and forth with AI agents. And then all of your inspections will get scheduled in 5 minutes. And that's where Blue222 will come in. The direction we're going is that we will be the plug-in for every company that's performing a real estate transaction, whether it be the lender that's driving the inspections, or the realtor, or the buyer. Whoever's driving the inspections will be plugged into us, and we'll just make it, get that work scheduled almost instantaneously. Whereas, before, you're picking up the phone and calling two or three home inspectors, two or three appraisers. We see it showing up on the schedule in 5 minutes after you've signed your purchase contract.
Which I think it sounds great because we all know if you're in this industry, right? Like emails and spreadsheets,
Yeah.
it's super manual, it's time consuming. But what I want you to tell me more, Alan, is about kind of the specifics of what you guys do. So how does Blue222's automation, particularly around bidding and scheduling, differentiate it from other platforms? And then what kind of impact is it having on engineering and real estate professionals?
Yeah. So the clients that we are best to service at this moment are anywhere from a small engineering firm that's managing environmental inspections around the country to a large. We're onboarding a $6 billion client right now that they're still doing everything manually. As I said before, there are lots of engineering or A&E firms out there that are they'll send out an email with 100 sites on it, and they'll send that out to 800 environmental inspectors or building inspectors and request bids. Then all those bids come back to the same email address. And then you have multiple people that are trying to sort which bid goes with which property, typically with spreadsheets. And so those are the clients that we are fixing things for right now. And depending on their onboarding process, sometimes, we have to work to help them get away from an onerous onboarding process. But if a company came to us right now and they had 30 people that were sending out emails all day long, I could onboard their vendors and have them operating with 3 people in 30 minutes. It's that automated. And the way it works is they now, rather than them send out emails and have to track everything, it just does all of that automatically. They put in the address of the property, they put in the service they're looking for, they upload, previous reports or whatever details they have that make it easy for the firms to bid on that project. And then they just launch, and our system goes out. It contacts all the vendors. It requests bids. It only contacts the vendors that need to be contacted, that can do that service and they're available. And then all the bids come into one place, and then one click, they assign the work to the right vendor, and everything's taken care of. So it's everything that they used to do manually is automated through our system. And where we are going, I don't know if you asked this yet, but we are heading toward a lot more AI in there. So right now it's fairly algorithmic, but it's very automated. What we are adding is AI machine learning for the matchmaking process. So rather than it be an automated matchmaking, with 10 or 15, different variables that are picking the right vendors, it may be 1,000 variables that the AI machine learning is looking at to assign the perfect vendor to the job, or request bids from 3 vendors instead of 5 vendors. And the system is pretty sure that those 3 vendors are available. They're going to get the job done fast. They're good at that kind of work. So that's one thing that we're adding in. And then for onboarding, it's a horrible process for a lot of firms right now to decide which vendors they're going to use, and to put them through a screening process to make sure they're okay with them. Large language models are perfect for that. So we're building onboarding LLMs that would allow, now, you're signing up now, you've got a client that wants to, use your services. And what you'll pick up your phone and open the Blue222 app, and it'll say, upload your resume, upload a sample report. Do you have insurance? Upload your certificate of insurance. And so it'll walk through everything that someone may have asked you by phone or by email, and it'll make sure it's what it's supposed to be. It'll look at your sample report and make sure that you know what you're doing, so all that stuff's is available now. And so we're building that on the front end, and then AI agents for the vendors to communicate with our system. So once you onboarded and you've got 5 clients they're sending you work through Blue222, now you're driving down the street and your phone pings and it asks you a few questions, and you say, okay, bid $450 for that, or bid $1,500 for that, whatever it is. And I can be there next Tuesday or Thursday, but only in the mornings. And then they're done. And the system goes and it figures it out. And then probably get to a point where they just say, look, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Just, make sure that every bid is between this amount and this amount. And if it needs to be higher or lower, just then contact me. And the system will just do it all. It'll automatically. And what happens is all of these vendors right now, they go home at night. Typically they're out doing inspections or writing reports. And then maybe the last 2 hours of every day, they're sending emails to bid on their next set of projects. Imagine if you didn't have to go home and spend 2 hours sending out bids. It was just automatic. That's where we're going. That's where we want it. That's what we want to do for the vendors. We feel like there's software out there. There's certain, there are lots of companies that use these vendors, but we want to make it really, really great for the vendors so they enjoy using our software.
And and just looking at the overall real estate inspection market, right? Like what I do for a living, what you used to do day to day is just a very small piece of, upwards and over of, $90 billion. So knowing that and how large the overall market is, how big is the opportunity that you guys are going after specifically?
We believe it's in the 50 billion range for our potential fees. Now, that assumes a lot. So what we see as available projects that are specifically tied to real estate is probably in that 90 to 100 billion dollar per year range worldwide, that are real estate transactional inspections. But then there are so many ancillary services. And the example I always use is somebody does a home inspection. They say, you need to replace the back part of your roof. and at some point they're going to need to get those bids. So we see our system, first it facilitates the appraisal, the home inspection. If your deal goes through and you purchase the home, before you even decide that you're going to buy the home, the system may have said, hey, I got 3 bids for replacing that roof that the home inspector said to replace, and it's going to cost this much. So you may want to factor that in when you're deciding if you're going to buy this house or not. So when you add those in, it's more like a $2.5 trillion market, worldwide, of all of those different services that are happening that are related to real estate and work that's done on real estate. So it's a monster market. I mean, we can expand for a long, long time before we run out of space.
Which is very impressive. And, in the conversations that we've had, Alan, it sounds like you have the team in place to do it, which includes experience in scaling multi-billion-dollar marketplaces. So can you tell us more about that team that you're equipped with and how their experience shapes your company's strategy?
Sure. Well, I started, I've been in the inspection part of real estate for a long time, engineering and inspections. One of my co-founders, Chris Moon, helped me start my previous company, ESA1, and build that into a national company. He has been involved in building Blue222 from the start, which really was a pretty long, slow journey. We were building and just kind of poking around for a while, and now we're really, building something massive out of it. But so both of us have been involved. We really know the inspection market, and that's what we're finding. A lot of VCs like what we're doing because it was hard for us to get started. It was really hard for us to get all these vendors on the system initially because there was a lot of chicken and egg. But because we knew them, we were able to get them on our system. It's not something that somebody that just thought it was a good idea and went out and raised some capital and started the company could do. There's a lot of moat that it protects us really because we just know the market and we know the people that are in the market. And then we just about a year and a half ago, I met a guy named Eric Craig, and I met him through Purdue functions. We both went to Purdue. Turns out Eric was the first employee of Orbit's hotel division, and he built that into over a $3 billion portion of Orbit's. He was the guy that led it from zero to over $3 billion. He saw what we were doing, learned, as he learned more about it, he was like, man, this is the most untapped market that I have ever seen. That really, really needs to be fixed. There's so much out there that needs to be fixed. And collectively, we were able to really visualize where we are, what it takes, the steps that it takes to get to where we are the marketplace platform that everybody plugs into. And so he sees a lot of parallels, and I do too, between what Orbit's, a lot of people don't realize that Orbit's is a platform. It's not just a travel site. So Hilton, Amex, all the companies that have travel sites, they use Orbit's for their back end. So it's a platform that they plug into. And so we see ourselves like that we don't want to compete. We don't want to compete with the, appraisal management companies. We don't want to compete with maybe other software that, banks are using to place orders for services. We want to be the company that all of those softwares and all of those front end order takers plug into to make their back end awesome. Just so it's, hey, plug in and now we don't have to use emails anymore. It's just all automated.
Really well said, Alan. And I think to summarize what you said, it's really just a relationship based business from the VCs that you guys know to the vendors getting on the platform, right? Yep. The way you've met the people on your team. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the inspection business is I do think it is insulated somewhat against some of the change we're seeing in the market because of how relationship based it is, yep. Which also creates a lot of opportunity for companies like you guys to come in and make some really, really positive change, particularly because it sounds like what you guys do is offloading what amounts to a lot of tedious work for individuals.
Yep. Yeah, we don't want to. I've had people say that, you guys are coming in and trying to just make this a faceless. No, we're not trying to remove the time that people spend interacting, with homeowners or realtors, or we're not We are just taking the tedious stuff. Because when you're, going home and emailing for 2 hours, that's not having a nice, communication with somebody. That's tedious. That's what we're looking to replace that. So you're spending more time. I mean, imagine if you're a home inspector and you just flip on your computer every morning and your schedule's full for the next 2 weeks and you didn't have to do anything. It's just automated. That's what we want to do. And then then you've got time to spend with people, and you don't have to spend 2 hours every night working on stuff. And you can throw in a visit to the coffee shop between home inspections instead of answering emails all day. That's what we're doing.
Beautiful. And it's right. It's all about, people, process, technology. And it sounds like you guys have all three figured out, and building on the relationship based piece. So you had mentioned VC. So anyone who's not familiar with the term VC is standing for venture capital.
Yep.
So you guys are currently in a capital raise.
Yep.
What can you share about that, and how will this funding help your company grow?
Yeah. So we are right now we're raising $4 million. We're calling it a seed round because we're still fairly early in the company, but that's the best time to get in, because you're going to see the biggest return if you invest, early stage in a company. More than likely, we will raise more capital later. And what we are doing with the capital is, all the things that I talked about, the AI agents and the AI machine learning that we're building in, that's where the capital is going. Also to bring in, we want to bring in the best people that really know how to build something like this. So Eric's bringing a lot of people that he knows from his previous experience at Orbitz and TrueCar and Groupon, a couple other places that he's worked. Chris and I are bringing in people that really know the market. So we're continuing to try to bring in the best people, but we're also trying to sort of look at the more modern philosophy of, look, so much of this can be automated. You don't need, 400 people to be $1 billion company anymore. There are $1 billion companies that have 25 people right now, that are early stage startups. And we should be that. People are predicting the first three person $1 billion plus startup company is on the way because of AI. So, we're going to be trying to use as much AI as we can for building everything. And I think that's what AI is. I don't think AI is going to just eliminate jobs, but I think the people that really figure out how to use it to leverage their capabilities as much as possible, that's the value of AI. And that's what we're trying to do. So anyway, I think the capital that we're raising will go toward that. We've got really good relationships with groups of developers that we can scale up or down. And so that's where the capital is going to be going, is just really building the best possible software that we can.
And doing, which then correlates to doing the best work possible for your end customer, whoever that may be. And, if like any business, if you're keeping your customers happy with a couple of other, things in mind, you're going to have something successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, people love using the software right now, and I think we have a long way to go. I mean, it's early stage. We've got so much we can do to make it really, really amazing, and that's what makes it exciting for me. I love trying to figure out how to make things more efficient. That's my brain has always worked that way. If my dad said cut the grass, I was trying to figure out how to get it done in the shortest amount of time, with the least amount of gas, and so I could get out and do something else. That's just the way my brain works.
And I can relate. I'm sure most of the audience can relate. That's just classic engineering brain.
Yeah.
But that's a great segue into our next question. So, engineering, real estate, inspection of anything physical, right? A traditionally manual industry. What challenges have you faced in bringing automation to these traditionally manual industries, and how have you addressed them?
Yeah, I think that's it's tough to get some people to embrace new technology. And I've somewhere I came up with this analogy, and I keep using it, that it's like you've got some of these big companies, especially. Imagine you have an army with 10,000 people and you're crossing the desert, and somebody rolls up with a whole bunch of transport vehicles, and they're like, "We can get you across this desert 10 times as fast if you just load everybody in here. And the general says, we don't have time to load everybody in those vehicles. That's the way a lot of companies, a lot of bigger, companies get big and they've just sort of grown, with duct tape. We were saying this before the
Mhm.
call or before we got on here, that they figure out something that works. And maybe it doesn't work great, but it works and it gets the job done. And then they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But meanwhile, it just takes a lot more people to do all the manual, tedious stuff that it takes to get that work out the door. So our biggest challenge right now is just convincing people that, hey, you don't have to have 30 people to to do this work. Even I don't care if you've been doing that way since 1995. You just don't have to. There's automation that will make everything so much easier, but you have to embrace it. So, uh, I personally, I mean, I know how it is. Like sometimes you try software and it doesn't work very well, and then you find software that works unbelievably well. So you get a little nervous about trying out new stuff, but you have to. If you don't try new stuff, you're never gonna grow or improve. And with all the AI agent stuff now, man, you better be trying to figure out which ones work, because some are going to fail, some are going to be incredible, and you better find the ones that work, because if you don't, you will be in trouble. If all of your competitors figure out how to use our software or use software that helps them really 100x their capabilities, and you don't, you're toast. So.
And Alan, it's a great series of points, and the one in particular about just figuring out what works, figuring out what's out there, and testing it. That's essentially what the genesis of this podcast was. It was just me being frustrated that engineers like me couldn't go to a central source to go find technology like yours. So I think it's great because you're addressing a need in the market for both, the end users of this product, which the end users of this product, as in like the engineers who get on the app, bid, et cetera. And then, your customers who are having trouble managing the process. So it seems to me like it's a win-win from both sides.
Yeah, I'm excited about all the AI stuff coming along because as I said earlier, I love being able to pull up the Amazon app and have something delivered same day or maybe the next day, you know, almost anything delivered. I love being able to have my groceries delivered, in 2 hours. I love being able to click a button on my phone and get a ride. So many things are improving that way. I'm super excited to be a part of bringing that kind of technology to the real estate world because it just really needs it.
Absolutely. And Alan, what final piece of advice would you give to AEC professionals who want to lead or build tech-driven solutions in industries that are slow to modernize? Because it's never quite a straightforward or easy process.
Yep. Well, I think we learned the hard way. So Chris Moon and I mentioned, we got this started, and we really learned the hard way. We built something that we would have wanted, but we didn't start with a lead client. We were building something and then we were going out and trying to figure out people that wanted to use it. So I think the best advice I would give myself, when I started this is find a lead, find someone who really wants to embrace what you're doing from the start so that you can make it really work well for them. And that's what we eventually did. We eventually found a big lead client that really loved what we're doing and needed what we were doing. And we worked together to polish it up and make it work great. They're still using the software to manage all of their projects nationwide. There people are using Blue222 probably in just about every state every day right now. And yeah, I mean, I think that's important, and that's hard. It's hard for somebody like me who just wants to get started and build something to be patient enough to wait until you find that right client to work with and find the right investors that are really excited about what you're doing. So that would probably be my biggest piece of advice. Plus, I always joke here, as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be dumb enough to think that you can do anything, and then hard-headed enough to just keep going until you do it. I think that's the best quality you can have as an entrepreneur.
And I Completely agree. And two terms that I brought up, or two ideas, aggressive patience, like you said, things take time, fall into place. That doesn't mean you have to stop working on, your mission, your dream, your goal. And honestly, like it's kind of funny to think about, but if you listen around, sometimes you'll hear some of the richest people out there, the most successful entrepreneurs don't know the difference between there and there, or your and your. And it's kind of funny because it ultimately didn't matter at the end of the day to them. So, I like where you're coming from, because you don't have to be the smartest or most talented person to be successful. It's just it's a combination of a lot of things, Alan. And I think you know where I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's not easy. There are a lot of mornings you wake up and go, "What was I thinking?" But then you have those days where things go well, and it's just there's nothing more exciting than building something and seeing it work well, and seeing it help people. And so yeah, the world needs more people to build cool stuff.
Absolutely. And Alan, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us today. If the listeners want to connect with you, ask you questions about the platform, just chat, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Probably the most direct is just blue222.com. So it's spelled out BLUE and then the numbers 222, blue222.com. And, they can, I think they can find me and schedule a meeting with me if they want to on there. They can also look up, just Google me or pull me up on LinkedIn, Alan Grosheider. Easy to find on there.
So, Alan, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thanks, Dick. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Until next time. Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.